Okay, we're continuing our series on tips for the trail. This was about a John Muir section hike that we did recently, so just kind of providing you some information that you might find useful for your next hiking trip. On this video, what we're going to talk about are mosquitoes. I'm from Ohio, I'm used to mosquitoes, but I thought that the high Sierras were dry, so I didn't need a fly for my tent, and I didn't need mosquito repellent because there were no mosquitoes. Was I sadly mistaken. The mosquitoes on the John Muir Trail actually competed with what I had up at Isle Royal a few years ago, and those are some big mosquitoes up there. So a lot of swarms, a very popular year, bumper crop, so to speak, for mosquitoes on the John Muir Trail. So how do we prepare for that? So first off, just kind of getting out of the gate, use Sawyer permethrin. So permethrin is a product by Sawyer that you can spray on your clothing ahead of time. So we sprayed our socks, our pants, as well as an overshirt to kind of help keep the mosquitoes at bay. Some folks actually recommend even spraying your tent, your backpack. We just kind of kept with the clothing. I will say that I use this guy here. So this is a Columbia quarter zip, or maybe half zip, I'm not sure. Not a huge fan of Columbia stuff over the years. It's kind of gotten a little bit cheaper in my opinion, but Backpacker had a review on this thing. It was called the Omni-Free Zero. Saw this in Backpacker a few issues ago, and kind of caught my eye, but it's 75 bucks. Who really wants to spend that for a Columbia jacket? Lo and behold, a few weeks before our trip, I find this on clearance at a Columbia outlet, so I got it for about 30 bucks. And it's a very lightweight jacket. Sprayed that with the permethrin, and believe it or not, this thing barely came off. I kept it on the whole time during the trail, took it off at night, but it kept me cool during the day and also helped keep the mosquitoes at bay. So a huge, huge fan. I'll talk more about that probably in the clothing episode. Anyway, the notion is sprayed it ahead of time, kept the bugs off. But that wasn't enough. There were still some other exposed parts. So the other big thing was you got to have one of these. Picked this up several years ago, I think, for the Isle Royal trip. $2.99. This was just a cheap Walmart thing. Kind of threw it in the bag. It weighs absolutely or next to nothing. But put this on with a brimmed hat, and you got yourself an extra little defense to keep the mosquitoes out. There were, I don't think a day went by where we did not have this thing on at some point during the trail, which my son and I figured out as you're walking on the trail, there's what we know as mosquito speed. So we know that wind kind of keeps mosquitoes away, but actually they're not very fast flyers either. So as long as you keep a fairly decent pace and don't, lollygag around too much, you can actually keep kind of ahead of the mosquitoes. Horsefly and blackfly, that's another story, but there is a mosquito pace that you can keep ahead of them. As far as other repellents and things that we had, so in case we put on shorts or something like that, or had other exposed parts, I'm a pretty big fan of these mosquito wipes. It's a 30% DEET. Over the years, I've had enough little spray bottles and aerosol cans and stuff kind of give out on me or not get enough coverage that I've been kind of left in the lurch out in the wild without any protection. These guys here, it's really hard to foul them up, and there's a ton of them in there. They don't weigh much, 20 wipes per thing. And this was a more than enough coverage to kind of get us, covered and things like that. Plus, even if somebody left the bag open, it's not going to dehydrate overnight. Whereas if you have a loose cap on a bottle or something like that, things can run out pretty quickly and also kind of mess up your equipment. So, big fan of these. These worked out fairly well. My wife even got to the point where she was kind of waving them around, and putting them on her neck afterwards just to be kind of doubly sure. So, big fan of the Repel mosquito wipes. Let's see, other things that we used to help with mosquitoes. We had this for a few trips, few smaller backpacking trips. This is called the Thermacell Backpacker. So it's made by Thermacell. It's around $30 or $40, and it's a little thing that runs off a canister. And what it does is there's these little blue packets inside of the foil here that have some kind of chemical strip that makes a wafting chemical up in the air, gives you about a 15-foot diameter bubble, so to speak, that the mosquitoes stay out of. And believe it or not, it actually works. We've used it on the trail a few times. We've used it on the patio. It works out nicely. Worked like a charm for our first 2 nights on the trail. What we did is we had a larger tent, had a fairly good sized vestibule, so we let it kind of cook over in the vestibule for a little bit before we went to bed to kind of clear things out. So we're really happy to have it. But after the second night, it kind of conked out. Bummed out about that. It turned out that basically this is the main plate that you need with the flame underneath. So we jury-rigged a candle that went inside, light the candle, put the little plate on top with a little packet on, and there you go. So that actually was a cheaper version than this. I wrote the Thermacell. Hopefully they're going to get back to me and make right with what's going on with this. I tried to do a field repair, couldn't get it to work out. If it was working, it is a great product in my opinion. Even with a 4 ounce, or what is this, 100 gram canister, you're supposed to be able to get 90 hours burn time on this. So as far as cooking fuel goes, minimal amount of cooking fuel that's used, and the refills last at least 4 or 5 hours. So a huge fan of this when it's working. Okay, other things we talked about, so those are kind of all the chemical defenses that we used. You want to keep up your walking speed. The other thing is be really careful about where you're camping at night. It turns out that mosquitoes do not like elevation, so if you're on a high place like the John Muir Trail, think about sleeping at least at 9,000 plus feet, and also try to get out as dry as possible as you can, dry as area as you can, not a lot of green. I know sometimes there's those really lush looking meadows, you're by that babbling brook, but anytime you have moisture or water, you're going to be have an issue with mosquitoes. So I remember one night we were actually scheduled to hike over a peak and camp at one of these lakes, or a series of lakes, and we decided to actually camp on the peak that night. We had a wonderful view, a little bit of breeze moving through, and very, very minimal mosquitoes. We were able to do kind of the hand-to-hand combat with them as opposed to the big swarms that we saw at Thousand Island Lake and things like that. So that's all we have for mosquitoes, and hopefully that'll keep you bug-free. Thanks.